Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews and get our daily best in your inbox on a daily basis. Every watch, every minute, here on Watchbox Reviews. Also, if you like this timepiece and you'd like to purchase it, check it out on our website with high-res images, full pricing details, boxes, papers, and accessories, along with our full collection of pre-owned Patek Philippe timepieces. Today, we're discussing a living legend, one of the modern icons of one of the grandest houses in high horology. It's the Patek Philippe 5970R Perpetual calendar chronograph, resplendent in red gold with opaline silver dial. This is a manual wind column wheel Lemania-based old school Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chrono, featuring a number of elements that have become classic. This is also one of the shortest runs in the long continuity of Patek perpetual calendar chronos dating back to the early 1940s, so a special piece by any measure. On my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see that it's an easy watch to wear. At 40 millimeters, it'll fit a broad range of timepieces, and yet it's not petite like previous generations of Patek Philippe complications, so it's not going to look undersized on your wrist. Now, my wrist is oval in profile, and you can see it's a nice match for the curve of the lugs of this watch. 46.2 millimeters means that you're going to be able to wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters in circumference, but because it is a Patek Philippe Grand Complication in red gold, believe me, it will have no problem holding its own against even a tree trunk forearm, so those large of wrist, buy with confidence. It's not a thick watch, perhaps a surprise given the complexity and the traditional movement architecture, but 13.2 millimeters thick with a generously sloped case flank and a concave bezel, it will slide underneath any dress sleeve or cuff. The timepiece, all of red gold, features a Patek Philippe red gold clasp to match. You can see a filigree style Calatrava cross, as well as fully polished red gold inside, and of course a full clasp, giving you an extra measure of security and confidence, insurance against droppage while donning or removing at bedside. The strap otherwise is quite compact. You'll note that it features a calfskin underlay and a burgundy top with semi-gloss large rectangular scale alligator leather. You could see folded edges and a monotone stitch in matching burgundy. The timepiece is easy to wear because the flow of the caseback profile actually arcs around the wrist. You can see at center, flat and irregular shaped screwed in caseback, so no pressure points or hot spots, and then tightly tucked downward turned lugs that almost arc 90 degrees from the horizontal sweep of the midcase to their downturn at the tips. Beautifully sculpted. You can see that because the watch is reasonably sized, not petite, but not oversized. The lugs themselves can be more fully expressed rather than cut down to stubs. Oversized watches generally have undersized lugs. Here the proportions are perfect, and you'll note the step of these almost claw-type lugs as they protrude in gorgeous fashion from the rounded profile of the case. The case is sensuous, curving. It's beautifully rounded in an almost feminine grace, and then the lugs themselves feature sharp creases and angles. This is a watch that combines both masculine and feminine elements with sculptural beauty and grace. The dial is simple. Let's get close now that the watch is no longer on the wrist, and conveys a large amount of information while performing a little bit of a trick of the eye, creating the appearance of a better match between caliber size and case size. Now you'll note that the bezel is dramatically concave to visually pair the mass of the watch, and a tachymeter scale is used outboard of the minute track and seconds track to better employ all of the geography that this dial occupies. You can see that the cluster of registers is actually quite tight, and because the watch is 40 millimeters, the tachymeter scale helps to create the illusion of a better balance between mechanism and case. The vessel, however, is gorgeous, and the dial likewise. All applied faceted and polished hour indices and leaf or foy style hands in rose gold at center. You'll note a blackened lancet style counterweighted chronograph seconds hand. A couple of details worthy of note. First, you can see the day and the month in faceted apertures that are actually stepped down for a progressive transition from the opaline silver or matte metallic silver of the dial down to the plane of the discs. Crescent style moon phase with glorious polished moon and stars at 6 o'clock within the radial date indicator, and you can see that there are actually concentric scales at 3 and 9. At 9 o'clock, you can see the 12-hour indicator for the chronograph as well as constant seconds, and at 3 o'clock you can see the leap year phase indicator as well as chronograph minutes up to 30. Now the chronograph does have a very mechanical feel to it. It's a chunky chug-a-chug as the enormous Lancet-style seconds hand plies its trade around the circuit of the dial at 18,000 vibrations per hour or 2.5 hertz, 5 beats per second. The traditional column wheel architecture has a distinctly bolt-like feel, like the bolt of a rifle. It is very distinct. It's not an over-refined feel, it's a vintage chronograph feel, because this architecture dates back to the early 1940s, and thank goodness for that. This is the same architecture that in a different form went to the moon as the Omega Caliber 321 and has seen service in Vacheron, Patek Philippe, Breguet, Roger Dubuis, and many others at the top of the market. So its architecture is simple but splendid. An enormous balance beating away at 18,000 vibrations per hour. It features a Gyromax free-sprung balance that Patek Philippe adds to the basic caliber, and the Gyromax system allows it to be adjusted in multiple positions with respect to gravity very precisely, and then hold those adjustments in the face of bumps, disruptions, or vibrations on the wrist. The size of the balance makes up for its lack of beat rate, the inertia helping to resist bumps, vibrations, or oscillations that are out of sync with the beat rate of the watch. There is a free-sprung architecture on top of an overcoil, so you have both toughness and, thanks to the overcoil, concentric beating of the hairspring in any position with respect to gravity. The overcoil helps the watch to keep good time in any position on the wrist or on your dresser at night. You can see the lateral clutch architecture. The combination of the chronograph bridge, the lateral clutch, which in impressive fashion is fully jeweled, with the driving wheel and the intermediate wheel both pivoting on jewels rather than bushings, more common for variants of this clutch type. Now you note, as you actuate the chronograph, you can see the black polished cap of the column wheel and the interaction of the levers. Let's get really close if we can. The interaction of the levers and the horns of the chronograph with the column wheel mechanism. This is why you want a manual wind, lateral clutch, old school chronograph caliber, because you can see and appreciate absolutely everything. Now, once I disengage the chronograph and stop it, I reset. You'll see the recentering hammers acting on the heart cam to recenter the indications of the chronograph at center, just like that. Beautifully blazoned with rhodium on brass. You can note perfectly aligned Côte de Genève across the bridges. There's a tight and even perlage across the base plate that you can't quite see from this vantage point. All screw heads are black polished. You'll also note that there is a beautiful graining or satin finish across the levers of the chronograph system, as well as a mirrored anglage, which you can see partially from this angle as it glints and gleams within all of the jewel and screw countersinks, as well as the edges of the levers and the bridges. Manual wind, approximately 48-hour power reserve. In terms of finish, this is the old school Geneva hallmark. These watches made from 2004 to roughly 2010. The vast majority of the approximately 2,800 to 3,000 pieces in all metals that were manufactured do feature the more romantic and older Geneva hallmark standard. One of the shortest runs in the long continuity of Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronographs. It's the beauty of the Lemania caliber and the perfect proportioning, the combination of angles and curves of the case, the simplicity and logic of the dial, the adroit style, the panache of this watch that make it a desirable watch, and a timepiece we already discuss as a vintage investment grade keepsake. Again, despite the fact that it only went out of production 8 years ago. See it and find out why this watch is so regarded on the watch box.